Hello everybody and welcome back to this new video. Today we're going to be talking about the Shock Linux box from CyberSecLabs. So let's jump into our Nmap scan, and we'll notice here that there's only 3 ports open, which is 21 FTP, 22 SSH, and 80 HTTP. So we notice that for FTP we cannot log in with an unauthenticated user, we cannot log in with anonymous, because else there would be an Nmap script checking that and saying that. For SSH, we obviously need credentials to log in, so let's take a look at port 80, which is running Apache. So going to the website on port 80 here, we notice this is a steakhouse that we can check out, but in the meanwhile, you always want to have some automated scans running in the background. So let's start up a gobuster scan for dir. We're going to specify a word list and a URL. So you can run that and then go and check out the main page. But for the cause of this video, I've already ran it. If we go to gobuster 80 root, we can see the results here. We have a bunch of htaccess and hdpasswd stuff that we cannot access. We have an about page, a beer page, a blog page, and we also have this cgi-bin directory. So cgi-bin, if you don't know what that is, you could Google that, and you could see here. If you Google it, you will notice that it's something with web scripts, and then here, for example, it says any file ending in .cgi, .pl, or .py is considered a CGI script. So this directory holds those scripts with those extensions. So we could try doing a scan on that directory with those extensions. So that was py, CGI, and PL for Perl. So you could run that scan, which I have already done, and if you check that out, the result of it, you'll see that we have this test.cgi, which gives a 200 status. Now, okay, so knowing that, you could, for example, do a search exploit for Apache and then CGI, see if anything comes up. And one of these here is shellshock. Shellshock is a very interesting vulnerability that is definitely worth looking at. It was pretty big. I think it's a very well-known vulnerability. So if we go to this link here, we can see that what it does is it's gonna have a payload here. So for example, this payload pretty much is gonna run this weird string and then bin bash. Now, I'm gonna explain this in a bit. We're first gonna exploit it with metasploit. So let's go to metasploit and do a search for shellshock. And we'll see here we have this scanner here that we can use. And let's show options. We'll set we'll set G for setting global, so we don't. If we use another module in a second, we don't have to specify the IP again. So that's the IP. We can then set. We have this target URI that we need to set, which is a path to a CGI script. So we can set our target URI to be /cgi-bin, and then it was test.cgi. Now we can try running that, and we'll see, oh, we seem to have command execution here. We are data because it's running ID. Okay, so we know it's vulnerable because we have code execution here. So then we can try this actual exploit, which is number 5 here. So we can use 5. We can show options again to see if this is all right. Looks all right because it saved our target URI and our host from earlier. So we can run this, and we'll notice that we will get a meterpreter session here. So that's perfect. So we've exploited it, and we currently have a shell as data. Now let's take a look at what it actually does. So it's going to send this payload, which executes a command. So looking at this payload, we can see that it first starts with these braces, and then these curly braces, and then a semicolon. Now, the whole idea behind shellshock is that it's a vulnerability in Bash, and we're currently exploiting it in Apache, but it occurs in Bash. And why does it occur? Well, in Bash, you can set environment variables, right? So you can set hello, and then you can echo the environment value. And this is always going to be treated as a string, right? So if I do a equals and then rm-rf, this directory. If I echo a again, it's not going to execute. It's going to be treated as a string, and that's the way it should be. However, bash is also a scripting language, and in bash you can set a function to a variable. So you could do a function like this that does stuff in between here, right? And now that function would be if I export it, it could be treated as a command, right? So that's what we're doing here. So we're creating this function that's basically going to do nothing. But the issue is, after that, bash should not consider this as a command anymore, but it does. And it should consider this as a string again, but it does consider this as a command. So when this function is being processed, it's being evaluated, this is also going to be executed. And that's the whole shellshock vulnerability explained in a nutshell. Of course, there's a little bit more to it that you would have to read up on your own and check out if you're interested in that. But that's the whole vulnerability. And now, how does this work? Because in Apache, we don't really have an environment value that we're using, I guess. But if looking at this exploit, it's going to put the payload in the cookie header. So probably Apache with the CGI script is going to put the cookie as an environment variable, and that we have our payload, and that's going to be executed. So I hope that kind of explains the whole idea behind shellshock. But moving on with the box, we currently have a shell. Let's exit out of our shell, store it back in meterpreter, and we can upload linpeas. So we're gonna upload /op privilege escalation scripts linpeas and then linpeas.sh. So it's going to upload. We can then go into a shell. We can add the execute bit to linpeas.sh, and we can then execute linpeas.sh, which is going to take a little second here to run. See, it's already running. Okay, let's go back to the top here. We have a Sudo version that might be exploitable. We have nothing here immediately. Let's keep on scrolling. Some network stuff. And we have something in yellow and red, which means it's 99% an attack vector. And we see this has to do with sudo-l. So let's go to the end here and do a sudo-l. And we can notice that we can run user bin socat as root without supplying the password. Now, when you have anything like this, I always suggest going to GTFO bins, because this is a great list for Unix binaries that can be exploited in some way. So for example, we can search for socat here, and we have sudo permissions on socat. So then we can see, okay, if we have sudo permissions on socat, we can do sudo socat standard in exec and then bin /sh. So if we run that, if we now do an ID, that failed. I broke the shell, I think. Yes. Let's go into a new shell. If we, okay, we have command execution here. We can try doing this, and that breaks, and that's fine because we can try some other stuff. We could try to get in just a single command, because maybe here we're messing up with the fact that we cannot spawn this sh shell. So let's do a can we do like an ID that break the shell, that didn't break the shell but didn't show us the output here. So maybe we can do an if you put this in quotes and we do echo a into /temp/b, and now we do an ls of /temp. We can see that nothing happened there, so maybe these quotes don't work. So we can try without the quotes to do an echo a inside of /temp/b. And it seems like it doesn't like these spaces here. Okay, so let's go back to GTFO bins here, and we see here as well that we can actually start a listener and then connect to that. So let's try that. So we want to run this on our attacker box, so that's our box. So we're gonna run this, which is gonna start listening on port 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then here, does the shell still work? Yes. we can do a socat and then connect to our IP. So we can do sudo, paste this, enter our IP address, then enter the port, and then copy the rest here. So that's will hopefully connect back to our box, and it does. And when we type ID here now, we can see that we are currently root, and we have owned this box. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope my explanation of shellshock was easy enough to follow. If you have any questions, as always, leave them below, and I'll happily answer them. Take care, and I'll see you back for another video.